Hello, and welcome to the Rest, Repair, Recover podcast. I'm Susie Bolt. This is a space for anyone who's navigating chronic illness. We are here to share real stories, helpful insights, and honest conversations about what it really takes to help yourself heal a tiny bit every day. So whether you're in bed listening, you're on a gentle walk, or you're just needing some company as you go about your day, I'm so glad that you're here. So here I have another one of my recovery stories to share with everybody. And this one is a particularly special one to me because Matt was, like me, one of the early adopters of long COVID back in 2020. And he was one of our very first students in the Rest, Repair, Recover program. And I'm sure many of you, if you're watching this because you're not well, you have a sense of, well, how ill was this person in comparison to me? Yeah. So I know that's a question that you have, right? Because then you kind of evaluate, how is my recovery taking shape in comparison to this person's? And one of the things that I remember thinking about Matt was, Matt is much further down in the abyss than I am. And that's a really, really tough place. And obviously Matt showed up weekly in the Rest Repair program and we would see him making these very, very tiny changes. And because we were quite a small program at that point, there was always the opportunity just to kind of watch someone in quite close detail. And it was like watching a very, very slow plant growing. But, one of the things that I'm absolutely delighted to share is Matt has made a full recovery and is here now to tell us his story, which is absolutely amazing. Matt, before we go into the illness, just tell us a little bit about you, your life, what you do, the things that you like to do and were missing when you were ill, so we get a sense of that.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so I've always been a really active person, and I don't necessarily mean kind of going off and running marathons and things like that, but just very, very outdoorsy. I've always spent, all my holidays doing things like, windsurfing and dinghy sailing and, climbing mountains or going traveling or, swimming, just constantly on the go, really. Just really active, quite competitive. I'm a teacher. I've taught for about 8 years now, and I was in industry before that. That's a really full-on job. And then my children are currently aged 6 and 4. So, but obviously at the time they were a lot younger when I fell ill. So yeah, just sort of, family life's incredibly important to me. And, outside of that, just kind of seeing the world and being really active is what I'm all about, really. So yeah, that's me.
That's you. Fantastic. Thank you. So Matt, when did you first meet COVID? Was it in March, February time?
Yeah, so it was the 22nd of March, 2020. So it was I kind of caught COVID a week before lockdown was announced, essentially. I was just coming to the end of a really busy school term. There was lots of talk about national lockdowns and whether we should follow Italy's approach and all this sort of stuff. And I think initially I just had a cough, really, and I wasn't. I just sort of carried on, and there were lots and lots of coughs going around school, and the children were coming back from nursery with coughs, etc. But I wasn't particularly ill. Initially, and then after about a week or 10 days or so, we were just doing things like going for a family walk. I just noticed I was becoming really quite breathless and just not able to. My sort of physical ability just wasn't what it was before, and it kind of just spiraled quite quickly. So by about day 10, I couldn't get up and down the stairs at home. I needed help getting up and down the stairs. But of course, there were no tests or anything like that then. And when I phoned when I phoned 111 and got advice from them, they basically said, well, are your lips blue? Um, you know, can you crawl up the stairs? With some help. And I said, well, yeah, I just about can, but I couldn't. I could barely. I could barely finish a sentence. I was so kind of breathless, and it just absolutely knocked me. So yeah, that was about the 10-day mark, and then there was there was a period of weeks where I was just very, very ill. I was kind of, at one point I just wanted to, my only aim really was to make it to my son's birthday, the following week. I just didn't really know which way it was going to play out. It's quite confusing because ordinarily, I think if you were that ill, you'd have been sort of taken into hospital and given care.
Yes.
But when the GPs did, when my GP did advise me to go to A&E, it was just quite a surreal experience because I was so unwell, and they clearly diagnosed me as having COVID, but they just didn't know what to do with me at all. So they kept kind of sending me home. But yeah, I was very ill and quickly became housebound. Very frustrated with the situation.
Yeah. So how long did it rumble along like that? And at your worst, what was going on for you? What could you and couldn't you do?
So I'd say it was a good 4 or 5 months, I would say, of just being, certainly housebound, but also, needing help to get around the house, and, kind of living like a 90-year-old, perhaps, just kind of going maybe downstairs once a day and coming back up at the end of the day. And I mean, the symptoms were, the classic kind of chest compression. I just remember lying in bed, feeling like an elephant was sat on me. The kind of shortage of breath, headaches were just incredible, just like the worst migraines ever, really. And then the kind of brain fog and some gastro symptoms as well. So it's like a whole, you name it, I had it really. And I wasn't able to read a bedtime story to my children. That was quite a vivid memory and like a really tough, really, really upsetting part of it, just not being able to engage in anything. It wasn't like, I was even trying to take them to the park. I was just trying to sort of, kiss them goodnight really and, read a short story, but I wasn't able to do anything like that, just reading a picture book. When I remember initially I tried to carry on working because, as schools had kind of moved to teaching online, and it was just hopeless. I mean, I'd kind of log onto my computer and, I literally I couldn't read an email, let alone respond to it. So that just wasn't an option at all. It was hideous, really. And it was kind of, every time I felt a slight improvement, I would kind of try and walk to the end of the road. There's this little turning circle at the end of our road, which is maybe, 150 meters away. And I'd just try and kind of potter down there. And it would just generally send me back into a worse relapse than I was before. So it was kind of like, it took weeks and weeks to make a tiny amount of progress. And then you do something really tiny like that. Or I remember once just trying to cut up a butternut squash. And, I was just literally in bed for like 10 days afterwards. And it's just not in no way like a normal response to, all the usual things you do when you're beginning to recover from things just didn't work, essentially. And then I suppose eventually by kind of August time, so a good sort of 5 months, I always sort of thought, well, I'm ill, but as long as I'm as long as I'm okay for the summer, that's won't be the end of the world sort of thing. And I'll be able to get back to work in September. But come the start of August, when we were beginning to think about going away as a family, it was just clearly I wasn't capable of going, even like making a journey, let alone, like going camping or anything like that. And these are things which I like genuinely, these are like my passions in life and things which really, like get me going. So that just wasn't an option. So my wife, Andrea, took the children away on her own to the New Forest that summer and kind of dropped me off at my mum's house. So I was, for a month, my mum was kind of caring for me, which was a really kind of, weird relationship. But it was like being a 14-year-old off school, really. Like I was kind of, I had to have my meals brought up to me in bed, and it was a desperate situation. It really was, and there was just no information or like knowing how long it would go on for.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember this so much. I remember you, saying your wife had gone off and was having the holiday that you should be with her on, and the young children, and you weren't part of that. And that was, I can really remember that being a really, really kind of heartbreaking moment for you. You were just, like all of us were going, what the hell is going on with our bodies? And when is it going to change? What is it that we need to do differently? So I'm not going to get you to dwell anymore on the kind of negative stuff because, it can re-trigger the kind of the trauma of that. And that is not what we want to do. We want to know, at what point did you start doing things that were beginning to help, and what were they? So what helped you kind of change this pattern?
Yeah, I think after that sort of 4 or 5 months, kind of boom bust, I kind of had, I just began to accept that I was ill, and
stop fighting it.
Yeah, exactly. I began to just accept and kind of chill out with it, really, and just think, well, it is what it is. It's not ideal, but like the good things are, all the medical results are improving. Like the pneumonia was clearing up. The kind of medically the tests were coming back, so I was kind of just holding on to all those positives. I kind of just, you kind of step back from it, and I began just sort of seeing my children and just thinking I just got to get better for them and for my wife, and like, I'm just not going to let this beat me, and I might need to go about it in a different way rather than kind of like attacking it and being a sort of like a sort of achiever kind of personality, just going about things in a different way, really. And of course, like this, obviously, the support networks began to grow. So initially that was a really good comfort that there were just hundreds of people in the same situation. And, I began to kind of form really like positive circles of people who I thought would, help the recovery most. And I kind of began sieving out the kind of, I don't know, the unhelpful messages and things like this. And, like even unfollowing different groups, which I thought were just a bit negative or weren't really serving me very well. So that kind of acceptance and just, through your classes, Susie, kind of, I wasn't probably well enough actually to join the class at that point, but just kind of surrendering to it, and was really important. So then, I kind of, they then made arrangements for it to work, and it was very obvious that I wouldn't be able to go back in the autumn term to teaching, that's for sure. And I kind of settled into this. I formed a little group called a little pacing group, and we began to have like tiny little catch-up meetings each week. And initially we could all manage about 5 minutes, and then we were just kind of flat out on the floor for the rest of the day. But that was really important to have that kind of human connection and interaction. And I suppose I was also doing what I could as well in terms of like raising awareness. And, kind of ended up on the Radio 5 Live a couple of times, and in like random magazines. I ended up
Aren't you in GQ magazine or something?
yeah, exactly, like in Men's Health magazine. Yeah, exactly. So I've kind of felt like I was, doing something worthwhile, and kind of it gave me something to aim towards, and something a little bit sort of something productive to be doing. Although it was kind of shattering as well at the time, doing all these sort of, media things, and yeah, so all that sort of stuff. But I think also I began to really learn to relax for the first time in my life, because until that point I was very much a person who was sort of unable to sit still, and was always on the go, never stopping. Probably, if I'm being really frank, just on the edge of being burnt out a lot some of the time. So I think I just began to see it more as an opportunity, just to kind of step back. I learned to meditate, and that was that was a game changer. Definitely, it didn't get me better, but it really helped to stabilize things. And I was meditating like 3 times a day, and it was like a skill. And as the more time, the longer I did it for, the better I got, and the more I enjoyed it, and the more I started to miss it if I didn't, if I didn't meditate each day. So that really helped, and so I suppose it was just an opportunity to work on things like, my breathing and like resting, and I don't know, I just did random stuff like when I was able to, and this wasn't when I was able to, I just bought like an adult colouring in book, and did things like that, and did a bit of painting at home. I mean, I wasn't doing it all day, don't get me wrong, but little things like that to keep you sane. And there were times when I don't know, it's an odd one really. There were times when I wasn't always, I wasn't always unhappy. Like at times it was kind of okay being like it. And, friends would come around and visit, and I'd sit on my chair outside the house and all that sort of stuff.
Well, I think there's something, you used the word, you kind of settled into it. And, what I would say, that was you finally accepting that you were ill, and that you actually really needed to learn how to look after yourself, not just, to get you through this, but just in general. I need to learn how to love my body in a way that's going to get me through life, probably in a healthier state than if I'd carried on at the pace that I was doing before. And I think there's quite a lot of people that make that realization that, actually, when they come out the other side, and loads of people come out the other side, they look back and they go, I don't want to go back to the pace that I was doing things at before, because it was too much. I just don't want to take it all on. And I'm kind of hearing that that's where you kind of allowed yourself to just sort of hang out, just enjoying having people around, enjoying doing little bits and pieces. It's accepting that slower pace, because as we both know, fighting this illness, fighting this recovery, throwing everything you've got at it is actually the wrong approach. You just keep hitting the brick wall and sliding down again. So it's lovely to hear you saying, I just got a colouring book and did a little bit.
I think it took a bit. There was so much information, as with everything in life now, there's just so much information out there, and all these people suggesting different things, alongside all the kind of medical tests which were going on. And it took a while to kind of just distill down what was actually useful to me and what was working for me. So whether that was, diet and supplements, and
I remember you took niacin, didn't you? That was an interesting one for you. You were quite sort of, when we first heard about the stat and flushing niacin, you definitely gave that a go. Can you remember when you noticed a difference from that? Did it help?
I mean, did it help? I mean, looking at the time, it felt, whether it was just a placebo or what, really, but goodness knows. But at the time, it gave me a bit of a lift, I suppose. but yeah, I went from kind of low histamine to, well, it's hard to remember, but all the different, like low, like eliminating carbs to low, low histamine, like anti-inflammatory diets, like into a lot of like fasting, intermittent fasting. I tried all sorts of those things that, in the end, I just settled on a healthy Mediterranean diet essentially. And I certainly eat less carbs than, like now than I did previously. And I've definitely, it's been one of the sort of long lasting changes. And I think that was part of the kind of how reducing this kind of boom bust pattern. But yeah, in the end, I wouldn't say any of them were particularly helpful to the recovery, apart from eating a healthy diet. And it was actually quite, I didn't drink any caffeine at all for those. I was housebound for 10 months and I didn't drink any caffeine at all. And actually, when I started to again, it was quite nice. And you find out that a cup of coffee or tea in the morning doesn't kill you, sort of thing.
No, well, it's such a relief when you find out that it doesn't paralyzingly ill again. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think there are just various things really. You kind of the diet was one thing where it was going like left, right, and then come back to the middle. Like routines. I began and kind of addressing sleep. I mean, when I was ill, it was just kind of, I did become quite an insomniac, and it was really quite challenging to kind of get that back on track again. And the way I did in the end was just I did a sleep program called Sleepio, and that helped me just to essentially, like, if I wasn't asleep in bed, like, I just didn't spend time in the bedroom. So this is when I began getting things together around the 10-month mark. I was, if I woke up at 4 a.m. or 3:30, I would just get up and go downstairs and,
right.
And
not fret about it.
Yeah. And just go and do something like productive or enjoyable downstairs and just say, oh, whatever, like, I'm awake. So what, really? I'll sleep later.
Yeah.
And that's something it really helped me that with the recovery, because I think previously I was quite often waking pretty early in the morning, if I'm being really honest. And I was kind of just getting really frustrated that I wasn't asleep. So now what I do is, generally speaking, I do wake at sort of, 5:30, 6:15, but I just get up. I always go to the park at the end of the road and do a bit of stretching and balancing and, a little bit of just be with nature, really. And then I find that really, it's just such a lovely time in the morning. I kind of do that, come back, like meditate for 15 minutes. And then that really puts, like, moving that rest from the end of the day to the start of the day has been really, really beneficial. And it's given me, like, all through last year when I was back at work, it just gave me that me time and thinking time. And
that's wonderful.
It's been a really, really positive change, which has carried on.
Fantastic. I mean, we still have people coming into the rest repair classes and coming into the yoga for deep sleep that are totally better. They'll do the breathe class just because they know it's good for them. They're back at work, but they're also aware, oh, I really want to work to keep my stress levels down, and I want some me time, and I wasn't prioritizing it before, so I'm going to keep it in my system now.
Yeah.
So it's really lovely to hear that you're just kind of, okay, if I'm going to wake up really early, I'm just going to make use of that time. And it's great. I'm inspired by that, because I'm currently waking up around 5 every day.
Yeah.
And I don't stress about it. It's no big deal because I'm not tired. It's my body wants to wake up then. But I think I might go out to park. I'll say Matt inspired me to go. So what I want to know is, so you started doing the classes, and I think you started to come in when we were kind of getting them up and running. So that was September.
Yeah, it was about September, October.
Yeah.
2020.
2020.
2020, yeah. Sounds like a long time ago now, doesn't it?
Right at the beginning.
Time flies. Yeah.
And we only had those 2 classes on at that point. It wasn't a program. It was just 2 classes that we did.
Yeah.
And Matt was, I don't even remember how many people were there. Maybe there was like 17, 20 people.
Yeah.
And it just gradually grew and grew. But we were all still kind of navigating our way through symptoms. And, you know, whenever anyone new came in, you know, we'd kind of start the story from the beginning and say, right, well, Matt's tried niacin and someone else has tried this. And, you know, you can go to the NHS and ask for this. And, you know, it was this amazing kind of self-help group, wasn't it? We got a lot of support from each other. So, you know, let's just fast forward you. So I know at some point you were beginning to really get your kind of physical self back, and you were beginning to tolerate more movement and stuff. Didn't you then go and do the Nuffield program? Was that something that you took on?
Yes, I did. All through that. So I've kind of spent probably, I don't know, like maybe probably like 4 or 5 months doing all of your classes and kind of stabilize things, and like the green shoots started to appear really, and things started to fall into place. I mean, I did something called the Reset program over that autumn, initially, which was more. So I think you have to get, so the physical and mental side of it have to come together really, essentially for the recovery. So that was really helpful in just sort of understanding what maybe why I was vulnerable to being ill, and kind of reinforcing all the meditation, you know, practice I was learning with you. I did do the Nuffield. That was quite a lot later actually. It wasn't until kind of Easter 2021. I was a lot further forward then in the recovery. Right. I think because I was, after being, you know, housebound for 10 months, I was just really deconditioned. And I think I was certainly through the worst of COVID. But I was just so skinny. Despite your classes, Susie.
You were really, I could see it on your face.
I was just like, just so skinny, and like the stamina just totally disappeared. It was quite frightening, really, like observing your own body, you know, deconditioning. And the Nuffield program was really kind of, it just sort of took me off on a different tack, really, and it reinforcing lots of the stuff I'd done before, but it was free, and there were personal trainers, and basically we'd have online Zoom classes for, I think it was about 6 weeks. It's 3 months of that, and then it was another 3 months, I think, of in the gym, going in each week, and that was really useful as well, actually. To give people an idea, for me, it kind of, I was kind of ill, I say to people, for 10 months, and then it took another 10 months really to build my stamina back. So it was quite a long process, and I think even kind of this time last year, there were kind of, sometimes there were bits and pieces coming back, and like sometimes the body was doing the old stuff still.
You did do a piece of mindset work, so we don't need to name them, but there's a lot of programs out there. But I know you did some stuff looking at your kind of neural pathways and getting the brain to kind of remember how to think like a healthy person, which I think so many people are beginning to realize that the catastrophizing of this illness and the fear that you have when you live with a body that you just don't know how it's going to respond to something, it then becomes sort of entrenched in the way that you think and behave, which then creates a whole other version of you, which you actually need to unpick. And I know that was, at what point did you do that kind of work?
That was, without a doubt, that was absolutely integral to recovery. So that was February 2021.
So the timing of that then allowed you to move into doing something much more physically demanding, like the Nuffield program. Because if I'm right in thinking, you then went back in and did, wasn't it a month or so of school before the summer holidays? You went back into work, didn't you?
Yeah, I did I did a phased return in May 2021 for half a term. And I had to build up very slowly. I mean, I did initially I went into work for an hour, and then had a day off. It sounds great looking back. And then like on the,
Totally.
and then yeah, exactly. Then so Wednesday when just built up incredibly slowly over. I was very very fortunate because they had someone else covering my job, so I was able just to go in and yeah, I was the maximum I was teaching in that first half term was like a couple of lessons a day. So it was like a skeleton timetable really. And then like this time last year, I went back into more or less my full-time job. I mean, it was full-time. I didn't have a form group, for example. So there was still like a couple of adjustments, but it's
breathing space.
Yeah, it's essentially. Essentially. So it did take a while to build back up. So I hadn't been in the classroom for 14 or 15 months. So,
just being around that noise and the energy of teenagers. I mean, just think about that's exhausting. Never mind.
Yeah, I do remember just walking back in and just, it's just overwhelming, really. Like the kind of, the noise and the busyness of the place and all the interactions on corridors, and then obviously everyone wants to sort of find out how I was, but I mean, there's sort of the brain body, the brain training stuff definitely helped with that, because I think for me, when there were really three phases. There was a kind of boom bust phase for 5 months, and then there was the phase where I kind of surrendering and kind of stabilizing, and which ended in the green shoots.
Yes.
But of course, for me, having spent 10 months in the house, like your whole identity does slowly begin to change, and your identity does begin. It began to become like someone who is unwell rather than a geography teacher. It began to, I don't know, it becomes quite ingrained. And I think I needed to go through that just to give the body healing time. But it then did become really tricky to get back out of it and just get back into a healthy mindset. So, and kind of combining that with getting your head around like a deconditioned body I really did need help, mental help really, to kind of have strategies in terms of what, even when you're walking down the road and you begin to feel like a symptom or two, like what is your brain telling yourself? Like what do you listen to, or how can you convert a thought into a more helpful thought? And it was really important to kind of, that began the sort of process of becoming healthy and, putting the illness to history and putting it to bed. And, that took many, many months of work. The progress was very quick after, but it did then take many months really to kind of get, like you said, like get back on track and, like kind of think again like a healthy person. I mean, all the kind of, I don't know, that sort of reintegration stage is quite tough in some ways, because you've been through such a hell of a journey, and in some ways you want to tell people about it, but in other ways it's just not helpful at all. And then you might just be in a totally amazing place, and then someone just starts asking you all about long COVID, or someone comes into work and says, "Oh, I've just tested positive," or someone's really ill, and you think, "Oh God, it's like the last thing on earth. I just don't want to talk about it. Like I just want to, and having the confidence just to say, yeah, actually, sorry, I just don't want to talk about this now. Like, stop."
Yeah, totally understand. And I think, if you've never gone through something like this, you don't understand the trauma, the journey that you've gone on, and the trauma that's been involved in it. The letting go of your identity, the change to your personality, the physical and emotional experiences that you've had. They're so vast and they're so challenging. And for many of us, they were the hardest thing perhaps we've ever gone through. And so for someone to just have a glib conversation with you about it, you're kind of,
But yeah, exactly. And it could,
hard.
for many months, it could be really quite triggering.
Yes.
And it took a long time really until I was able just to brush it off. When people were like, "Oh, how do you feel about getting COVID again?" And it's like, "Oh, fine, really." Like something, like water off a duck's back. You just
Right.
but it took a long time to get to that point.
Yeah. Well, actually, can I just say that you did just have COVID again, didn't you? You had it just after I had it recently.
Yeah. Yeah, I had it in July actually. So I was kind of going around thinking I wouldn't get it again and had my vaccinations and stuff. And I got it and the test came back positive. And yeah, it was, I did freak out a bit for a few days, if I'm being really honest, because of what I went through and etc. And it did take it took 2 or 3 weeks to get kind of back on track. But I knew the thing is like you come out. I don't know about you, but you just come out of this so much stronger. You just think, well, like if I can do that once, then like I'm like A, I've been vaccinated. Like B, like I've got all these strategies in place, and I'm just a different person. So everything that went before just isn't really relevant because if I was that Matt back in March 2020 now, I would just approach it differently.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah. And, I wouldn't try kind of, doing all the stuff I did back then. So yeah, I kind of, it took a couple of weeks, but
it's taking most people a couple of weeks.
Yeah, exactly. It was just a normal, reaction. And I think you just come out of it so much stronger, like mentally. So much stronger, and you just got so much more perspective on life. Whether that's like trivial things happening at work or, I can just step away from things. I can go into that rest state much, much quicker. And you just sort of think, well, if I can do that, I can do anything. And that just keeps coming back into my head. And I've come out of it with a lot of confidence, really. And I mean, you wouldn't ever put anyone through it or
wish it on anyone.
Wish it on anyone because it was just dreadful. But it's all just part of life's tapestry, and the sort of things I do now. I mean, are quite different, and I do feel like a better version of my old self, which is brilliant, really.
I love to hear you say that. That's so inspiring. So what I want to finish on is just tell me about the summer that you've just had. So despite having COVID in July, you've gone off and had the one of the best summers you've had in a while, I think. So tell us what you were up to.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an awesome year, really. This whole year, just been sort of ticking off all the things I wanted to do. I mean, this summer we've been away in our camper van for a couple of weeks in North Wales, and it was just like a tropical conditions. It was like being on a beach island over there. It was superb. I entered a sailing event with my children, which we won. Which was awesome. We retained the trophy from the year before, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, cool.
You have to be careful of that kind of achievement mentality, don't you? But that was really cool. Loads of paddleboarding, like loads of swimming in the sea, barbecues, met up with my brother and his family. Just having a really great time. And then, I've been the rest of the time, I've had spending time with my children. I mean, so much has gone on. The whole cold water thing has been amazing. I've like 2 or 3 times a week for 18 months now, I've been dipping in cold water. And I found this really awesome community locally where, we kind of meet up at 6 a.m. on Saturday morning, and we do breath work. Then there's like a dip in the water, and then we have a bit of a party afterwards. And it's like bonkers, but amazing. It's kind of like Wim Hof.
Stuff. Yeah. Wim Hof for beginners.
And I've just carried on doing that the whole time, which I love. Absolutely love doing that. And it kind of
let me just ask, at what point did you start that? Because I remember you added that in, didn't you? And you weren't better, but you thought you'd give it a go.
Yeah, well, it was one of the many ideas listening to all the podcasts, like Dr. Chatterjee's podcasts are amazing. And one of them was about kind of cold water therapy for inflammatory conditions.
Yes.
So yeah, I started that kind of Easter 2021. So
Okay, so after you'd done the brain work, you were beginning to do the physical rehab stuff.
Yeah, but before I started back even a phased return at work, so it was still quite early days.
Cold.
Yeah, cold. I mean, it's basically a river. I'm really lucky. There's a river quite close to where we live, and there's cold water there. And I just started, rather than just going for a walk in the morning, I thought, well, why not jump in?
Amazing.
So I started doing this sort of wild swimming really on my own at sort of silly times in the morning. And I thought, well, this would be great for the summer, but there's no way I'll carry on through the winter. And then of course I did. And you have a night's draw in, but you just carry on. And then I met this sort of community, the Reservoir Dogs, they're called. And they kind of set themselves up during lockdown as well. And there's some just amazing people. And yeah, we there's like a guided meditation to start with, breathing, breath work. And it's just great to be part of that community. So I've been carrying on doing all of that. But
amazing.
We've also got some good news in the family. My wife's expecting, so
wow. Oh, that's great news.
So yeah, in about 4 or 5 weeks' time, we'll, all being well, we'll have another Bromley in the family. So
quite soon. Oh
yeah,
my
exactly. Yeah. and even things like that, I just think probably wouldn't have happened actually if I hadn't got ill. We were quite in many ways happier too, but we just probably about a year ago when I was like definitely getting better, and I was definitely going to make a full recovery. You just start thinking, well, you live once, and we're fortunate, and it happens. So yeah, it's been a really awesome year. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Oh, Matt, that's gorgeous news to finish on. Look, what I want to say to everyone that's listening is don't give up hope. Okay. The journey might be a slow one, but as you can hear from, Matt's amazing story here, you just got to keep going. And there is a point where you surrender, and there are these different phases, and you definitely have to do a bit with the brain and just really checking in with what are the thoughts I'm thinking. And there's so much information out there. It wasn't available to us when we were kind of, going on this journey ourselves. We were kind of making it up as we went along. But there's so many tried and tested things now that, we recommend still, and pretty much everything that Matt's talking about is what we're still recommending. Because as you found, Matt, as I found, as pretty much most people find, unless they have specific organ damage, there isn't really anything that standard, pharmacology can help you with, unless you need your beta blockers and your bits and pieces. But, most of us take our antihistamines and do the work. And the work is the breath work, the meditation, the calming the nervous system, the connecting with people to get support, and then gently, gently letting that body-brain connection come out of panic, come into a place of safety, and then slowly allow those green shoots to emerge. So, if Matt can do it, and you're listening to this and you're thinking, my God, I'm nowhere near as far along, and I don't know if I can do it. I just want you to take hope from this story, because, I would look at Matt and go, this one's a tough one.
I was a goner, right?
Yeah, well, no, you were never a goner, but we were like, it was such a slow kind of emerging from your chrysalis. And you've done it so beautifully, and it's so inspiring to hear you talk about your life now and moving on to having another little one in the family and doing all of the stuff that you've managed to do this summer, because I know that there's people out there who, are in the same position that you were in, around that July, August time before you joined our sessions, where you're just kind of going, oh my God, do I need to just surrender to this? The answer is yes. Surrender to love and taking care of yourself. That's kind of one of the first things. So it's such a nice honor to have you come back in and talk. I haven't seen Matt for ages, so it's really nice to have him come back in, because of course he wouldn't need to come to class because he's back at work. But we miss people when they've been with us for quite a long time and they disappear off. It's like, oh, hello, old friend. So, Matt, what would you say to anyone just as a kind of closer before we finish?
Yeah, I mean, just just never ever give up hope. I mean, there's times when you just feel a need to just scream into a pillow and just like F and blind. And, you know, when you're left in a house on your own and everyone else is having fun and you just think, what the hell is going on here? And you see these people twice your age kind of walking past and you just think, God, like, how does that person do it? Whereas but you just, you need that sometimes just to let go, but you just never go at hope. And there are lots and lots of different options out there. And it's just about piecing this really big jigsaw together. And I think, I mean, my journey took quite a long time, but I don't think it necessarily needs to. And, it's just different for everyone, really. There's like a common set of things which are really helpful, but just surround yourself by good people and supportive people and positive people. Never go at hope. Keep plugging away. Sometimes the progress is really small. Sometimes you go crashing backwards, but eventually you find the way through. And like life afterwards feels like sweet. It feels really sweet, and you meet all sorts of people along the way. Yes. Loads of people you won't stay in touch with. A few people who make really good friends, and it changes you in a really beautiful way as a person. So just keep going, and you will get there. There's no reason why you can't get there. Just takes kind of determination in a different kind of determination. Good luck with your recoveries.
Matt, it's been an absolute joy talking to you and seeing you, and you did brilliantly because you didn't need to go and rescue the kids from each other. Thanks so much for listening to the Rest, Repair, Recover podcast. If this episode brought you comfort, insight, or even a little spark of hope, I'd love it if you left a review. It really helps more people find this kind of much-needed support. And if you know someone that needs to hear this too, please share it with them. I'm sending love, as always. Look after yourselves.